Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neuro-linguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage and relationship coaching, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV therapy and coaching services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoach.drdanamzallag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our second episode of season 30, a very special guest and founder of Good Samaritan Home, which is a re-entry program for men and women after prison, Mr. John Graham. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. John, the floor is yours.
Well, if I had listening to your resume there, if I had met you 50 years ago, I wouldn't have made so many mistakes in my life getting here. I'm the founder and director of Good Samaritan Home in Ohio, which is a reentry mentoring program for men and women coming from prison. But the key element, I've never been to prison, but the key element is that many of us have made mistakes in our lives. And I went through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 career changes until I was 53 years old and founded Good Samaritan Home. And since then, we've been able to help 2,500 men and women turn around their lives in very practical ways and how to not just stay out of prison, but how to become productive citizens. So I have become happy helping them find their own happiness.
Excellent. So first and foremost, thank you so much, John, for being here today. And I know that after people being incarcerated in the prison system, it's very hard to feel that when they come out, they're being judged, they're being perceived as not really good, contributing to being a member of society and so on and so forth. So they're being like typecast as someone that they would not want to be able to be dealt with. So how, when people get back into society, what is the biggest challenge that men and women after prison have to deal with?
Well, the data was showing, the research showed that no matter what programs you have inside prison, when somebody is released, there's always a stigma. And so what people need is some place to be safe until they can at least find a job. But you can't find a job until you have a place to stay. And you can't find a place to stay if you don't have a job. So our home are contracted with the Department of Correction to not just offer free temporary housing, but we offer the encouragement. And what we do is we teach basic skills like making a bed, which sounds silly to most people. But if you grew up in a home where you slept on the couch, if you're lucky, or if you slept from what we call couch surfing, house to house to house growing up, or you grew up in abuse or mental illness, then finding a stable place for 3 months, 6 months, a year is a magnificent opportunity. Then you can find a job. And so then we encourage people how to go to work every day and to keep that job, because you never go out and find the job that pays you $100,000, even if you've never been to prison. But what you do find is a job that gets you started at minimum wage, and then you get a pay raise for showing up on time. And then you get another pay raise for being a hard worker while you're there. So we're not rehabilitating. In many cases, we're habilitating. We're teaching skills for the first time. And I'll be honest with you, Dan, there's nothing that I find more encouraging and more fulfilling when somebody says, I never felt like this before, when they're holding up a certificate from a training class and they just graduated from something for the first time in their life. They feel normal. That's the best way to describe it. They feel normal. And no longer are they known as an ex-con. They're known as a person. And that's something we all look for, I believe.
And that I agree with you 1,000%, John. But when it comes to the happiness factor, and I know that you talked about a little bit about that prior, and what is the percentage of incarcerated people that when they leave prison, they deliberately put themselves back into the prison system because they're too afraid to having to deal with taking care of themselves when they were institutionalized. And after a while, just like the movie Shawshank Redemption, if you remember that movie, do you think that
Mhm.
after a while they get so used to being between walls that they do not want to go back to regular life?
That is definitely a factor. I was thinking of that very thing while you were asking the question, because imagine, and we had this just last week, where a man who'd been incarcerated for 30 years, he said, looking at a cell phone, I don't even know how to turn this thing on. I don't know what it is, but I can't. How do I find a job when there's no newspapers? How do I make a call when there's no phone booth? And it's very frightening, particularly if you're 60 years old, 65 years old, and there's no one out there to help you. So sometimes the best you can hope for, at least now, is getting somebody signed up for food benefits, getting them connected with a mentor, and that's where the community social groups come in. And the truth is, the church used to be and still should be a part of this. Unfortunately, we've seen a real decline in social groups. And so sometimes all you can do is reach out to people like yourself. And that's why our homes can be so important, because they develop friendships among equals.
Mhm.
They may be exiles, but they're equals. And I'll be quite candid with you. At one point in my life, I was a minister thinking I could help people, but I feel more comfortable with people coming from prison than I do in most church boards, because in the ex-offenders we deal with, at least they're willing to admit their sins. Too many of us in the church think we have no sins, and that's probably the greatest sin of all. So, and to answer your question, uh, we just take one day at a time, and there is, it's not as great as you might think. It's a factor, absolutely a factor, but we deal primarily with people who are either having drug issues or mental health issues. A big one is mental health issues,
Yes.
because they just don't know how to operate in the community. So we partner heavily with the local resources to help us with that.
But do you think, John, that because we all know about how the system works when it comes to the prison system here in the US. But do you think that they make it so difficult for those who are re-entering society and they know that they will screw up again and they bring them back because obviously there's some factors that are more beneficial to the state per se when it comes to keeping people incarcerated. But when it comes to treating them for mental health problem, does the state actually contribute financially to having therapists at the prison to be able to assist those who are dealing with some issues?
I can't speak for the national situation. I do believe what you say about the national profiteering from
Yes.
incarcerated. I do believe it's a factor, but I will say in Ohio, I have not seen it, because surprisingly, for being a very conservative state, it's extremely progressive when it comes to rehabilitation issues. Uh, the data is coming out of the University of Cincinnati and Xavier University, and what it shows is that the best rehabilitation occurs in the community. So what they focus in on is that the high risk persons get the heavy programming, but the low risk persons in the community do better. And so that's where we come in. And think of it this way: if it costs $106 a day to keep somebody in prison,
Mhm.
but if you can put them in the community for a third of that cost, and then they get a job, they pay taxes, they pay child support, and they're buying things in the community, that $106 goes back into the community
Mhm.
and not out of the taxpayer pocket. So everybody wins. And the recidivism rate, the return to prison rate in Ohio, has dropped from upwards of 50% down to about 30%. So it's working. It's absolutely working. But it takes a community commitment. And there's no question, incarceration alone is not the answer. It just, it only works to put a holding pattern for the most severe issues, but it doesn't do the rehabilitation. That occurs in the community with programs like ours.
And how much do you think that when it comes to those programs that they have in the state or whichever state, either Ohio or anywhere else in the US, is the government really investing a lot of money to be able to successfully rehabilitate prisoners? Or do they just say to themselves, especially now with all the budget cuts that we see at the federal government to be able to get rid of overspending? Do you think that now with the Trump administration, they're going to reduce the amount of money putting back into helping prisoners to rehabilitate into the system?
When we started in 2001, it was under the President Bush faith-based initiative, because whether you agree with his politics or not, he believed that what he called compassionate conservatism. In other words, it puts your faith and puts your works together in the street. And he helped us get started with not just programming, but they had a whole commitment at the state level. And we grew from one house with 4 beds to 21 houses with 100 beds that we can accommodate now.
Okay.
So that worked very well because the state was and still is very committed under both Republicans and Democrats. Today, I am a little nervous. You're absolutely right, because this administration, I believe, is not committed to genuine cost savings. I think they're committed to things that play well in the 6 o'clock news. And
Yes.
there's no sympathy for the people we deal with, even though the people we deal with are probably your cousins, your grandchildren, your maybe even your own children, particularly because of drug issues.
Mm.
But right now, we're in a very tenuous political situation where we have a faith-based program that's going to, we live on our faith. Let's put it this way, because we just don't know, but we're still committed to do the work we're doing because it's the right thing to do. And that's all that matters.
No, that's I actually agree with you 100%. But the thing is that you have to surmount all those challenges that are coming. I mean, financial, political, and so on and so forth. So that definitely kind of put some kind of like strain in especially in establishment just like yours to be able to kind of provide the service that you need, but yet having to operate on a shoestring budget, and that in itself causes you to be or your like system, I mean not system, but your services to be able to take kind of like a beating when it comes to the type of services that you could offer, and that you have to cut in certain areas that will not really provide the key element for them to be able to reintegrate into society. So that in itself changes completely the dynamic of how you can successfully implement a program just like yours.
When we started off, we live initially in a very rural community, very conservative community, and the largest city nearby is Dayton, which has 150,000 people. And so we were in a rural 13,000 population,
Mhm.
and there was great apprehension that we were starting a program, and it was perceived as a city program in the country. And race is always a factor. And there was a lot of blowback from the community. There were petitions, there were calls to the city council, there were meetings, there were laws passed, there were threats. We ended up suing the city on 3 different occasions. But what we found when it was all said and done, that money talks and everything else walks away.
Mhm.
And we can show we opened up our program to local people in jail who were being, the county was paying $86 a day for, that we were able to take them into our housing and avoid jail for the low risk persons and save the county $86 a day per person. And over the last several years, I can show Republicans and Democrats that we've saved the taxpayers literally $1 million in jail costs. And I think that's something that transcends politics, because you can see it's actually saving you tax money.
Mhm.
And And we haven't had any problems, any blowback. Oh, I'd say for the past 5 years because of this,
Oh,
that
wow.
you have to speak the language of the people. If I were to say to a very concerned conservative person, I want you to do something that President Biden was in favor of, they wouldn't agree with it because it sounds liberal. But if I say that this will save you money, and this is something that President Bush and obviously President Trump is trying to do, they I think would be more in favor of saving money. And even if that meant having somebody that a program you're not comfortable with, but if it's particularly if it's your neighbor's child, if it's a local person, I think, and they have been much more open and accepting to that then.
I see, I see. So, I mean, the Good Samaritan Home, this is basically a halfway house. This is what's considered as such, right?
Legally, no, but yes, the halfway house is mandated. You have to go there because it's part of your sentence. You're
Okay.
halfway home, but this is beyond the halfway house. You are free to go somewhere else, but you have nowhere to go. So if you
Oh.
choose to leave, that's on you, but I'm offering you free housing.
Oh, okay, okay. So the halfway house is basically obligated or mandated by the system to be able to spend a certain amount of time until you are completely rehabilitated and then you are comfortable enough to be able to reintegrate into society. Or and but then are you allowed to leave the halfway house as much as you want to just come back at night, or do they have to stay there, follow certain I would say classes or group session, whatever it is? I mean, is there really so much of a big difference between what you offer versus what a halfway house offers?
Well, halfway house it's a lockdown facility, and some places allow you to go out and work during the day,
Okay,
depending on your sentencing, but they often require programming.
okay,
That's part of your sentence, and if you don't finish the program, then you may be sent back to prison. But in our house, you're here because you're supposed to be out in your own house, but you're homeless. You have nowhere to go. So it's a hybrid between a homeless shelter and a halfway house.
I see.
It's still voluntary, but we do have what we call accountability. In other words, you have to be in at night. We lock the doors to keep you safe in, not to keep you from going out. But if you do go out, the alarm will trip, and if it's not a legitimate reason, you could lose your bed. And
Oh, okay, okay,
so
okay.
that's it's not a punishment. It's just a loss of a benefit.
I see. I see. That makes a lot of sense. So, when it comes to the level of happiness, especially after those who leave jail and they're afraid to be able to fall back into their old habits and either drug dealing or drug using, whatever it is. Um, Obviously, happiness is very subjective. They want to be able to get back and live a very honest life and so on and so forth. So when it comes to the happiness level, I mean, do you give classes about that, about the science of positive psychology, or do you offer anything to be able for them to understand really what is their contribution to be able to finding happiness on their own?
What I found when I was trying to convince the neighborhood about the benefits of our program, I presented the data. In effect, I was trying to teach the community. Nobody heard me, no matter how accurate my data. But what they did hear was the fact that we kept our house clean and quiet. And what we did was when the snows came in winter, we cleaned the entire block. We were a good neighbor.
Okay.
They actually could see that we were safe. And
Okay.
so the same thing is if we were to offer a class, this is a class in how to be happy. I guarantee you nobody would hear it.
Mhm.
But what I found with people coming from prison is they have a very good sense, of feeling. They can sense if you accept them. They can feel your acceptance. And the best example is Jimmy. Jimmy was schizophrenic, and he had been off and on in the street all of his life.
Okay.
But he was a veteran,
Mhm.
and when the VA hospital staff found him in the middle of winter in his truck, sleeping and nearly frozen to death, and they called us and said, "Can you take him in?" And so we took Jimmy in for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and he stayed on and on for 14 years in one of our houses. And
Wow.
before he died at age 81, he said, I've never had a home before like this. I love you guys. And we never had a class for Jimmy. We would simply talk to Jimmy. We would treat him like he was a normal person. But we also held him accountable to make sure he took his meds. And that was the requirement, accountability. Jimmy felt loved. And that to me is that's where the real programming is. It's not what we say, it's what we do. It's what we vibrate.
That's amazing. And yeah, you have to give good vibrations, just like the one of the songs. I forgot who the group Good Vibration is. I think it's the not the
Beach Boys.
the Beach Boys. Thank you very much. Okay, that just came out of
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm hip, brother.
Yes, 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 definitely. We are the same generation or so. But yeah, so I think when it comes to finding people, especially if the state calls you and say, hey, we have a certain situation right now, can you take this person and that person? But then if you see that there's a lot of requests from the state, can you tell them, well, look, we don't have as many beds. We'd like to be able to expand our facility. Can you give us a grant? Is there a way for you to be able to get more money from the state?
Well, initially we were getting grants, and those are always iffy. That's like it's like standing on the street corner asking for a handout.
Mhm,
We see ourselves as a housing provider, so
mhm.
we are legally we are a vendor. We have to register. We have to meet the standards of the state program for housing, and they inspect and audit us to make sure our facilities are up to standard, and we have accountability for our bookwork. And we grew with that accountability and the fact that we could meet their requirements. And we have a contract, and it started off with 4 beds, and it's on a per diem. So we get paid for every time somebody stays at night. So we can then build on that contract, knowing that it's a business model. And then we went to 10 beds, and then to 30 beds, and now our contract, I believe it's give or take about 88 beds. So we are paid per day, per bed. And at the end of the year, our budget with our 10 staff members is about $2 million. And the state benefits because they're getting about $4 million in services. And we see us as the hands and feet of the parole department in
Mhm.
very practical ways.
I see. That's really, really interesting. So if you could just tell us or tell to the listeners before we end this podcast, where, I mean, you're located in Dayton, Ohio. Is that correct, John?
Yes, Western Ohio, yes.
Western Ohio. Okay. And how many homes do you have? Is it in the same state or you actually spread in different location as well?
No, it's all in the Dayton region. We started off in the rural community, but we have primarily all our houses in Dayton because that's where the need is.
Mhm.
But it's a boarding house model,
Okay.
not a dormitory. So we
Okay.
try to make it as normal as possible. So we may have a house with 4 or 5 people, and they share the house, and they may have a roommate,
Mhm.
but you're not living in a prison dormitory. And it's again, everything is a step down to normal.
I see. And do they have to do their own cooking or just someone who cooks food or how do they feed themselves?
They have to do their own cooking, their own cleaning up. We don't make your bed. Yeah, that was your mama a long time ago.
Okay.
We provide a safe place for you.
Okay.
So, and actually, my staff is very good about you need to make your bed. You need to clean up behind yourself. You cannot sleep on the couch because normal people don't do that.
I see. Okay, so you're giving them back some new habits that they have to adapt. But I'm obviously when they were living in prison, they actually had to be able to take care of their bunkers and they have to take care of their cell. They had to take care of all that. So I don't know if there was any sofa in prison for them to fall asleep in. So I'm not sure if they would adapt this new habit.
Yeah, in prison, you have to make your bed, but
Yeah.
I think there's a difference. You have to, so it's a prison thought. But on our place, we do it as it's an old ha something the Navy SEALs used to teach is that you're going to be rejected all day long as a Navy SEAL trainee. But in the morning, you make your bed so that when you come home tonight, so tired you can't even move, you'll look at your bed and say, I did something right today.
Yes. That
That's what we teach. It's for pride.
Yes, absolutely. Now, if is there like a website, John, that people can go in, those who are located in the Dayton, Ohio area, so they could actually, like log in or sign up for a bed or anything of that sort?
Well, that's all done through the Pro Department, and it's only in Ohio. But what I can do is I would encourage people to look at goodsamaritanhome.org
Okay.
and check out the program because I think it can be applied particularly for people who want to do in this culture where there's so much fear and anger and animosity towards one another, where
Yeah,
you can't even you go to a baseball game and people are fighting with a 10-year-old boy over a baseball.
I know, it's terrible.
Yeah. So yeah, and so what we try to do is we can encourage people to be the good neighbor, like Dr. King taught us. And so check out Good Samaritan Home, but on a very practical level, out of all these stories, I wrote a fiction book. It's called Running as Fast as I Can.
Okay.
And it's a story of a man like you and I who started out trying to catch up with normal people who came from normal homes. But he came from poverty, he came from abuse. He felt like he was running behind everybody else. So that book has sold so well
Mhm.
because the readers are identifying with the struggles to catch up. And go to johndavidgraham.com and check out the book because we have literally sold 21,000 copies in the past year. And that, from my perspective, is unheard of for an independent author. It says volumes about how hungry people are for a hopeful message. And that's what it is.
Wow, that is spectacular. So, John, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast, unfortunately. Now, again, thank you sincerely for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us, and we all appreciate your participation and willingness to share your extensive knowledge and the key factor to contributing ultimate happiness with prisoners. Now, to our millions of listeners out there, we hope that you've all enjoyed today's episode as much as we did. And we're also very excited for what's ahead in season 30 of the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, featuring a lineup of incredible guests with powerful stories that will continue to uplift and inspire all of you. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. True happiness is not found in fleeting moments, but in the foundations we build of our lives. Strong social bond and deep connection remind us that we are never alone and that love and support can carry us through different challenges. Good physical and mental health provides the energy and clarity to embrace life fully. Engaging in meaningful work or activities gives us purpose, allowing us to feel that our life truly matters. These three pillars, relationship, health, and purpose, form the heart of lasting happiness. The quickest way to reach is by nurturing them daily, even in small ways. Call a friend, care for your body, calm your mind, and pursue what gives you meaning. When these elements align, happiness stops being a pursuit and become a natural way of living. My name is Dr. Dan Amzallag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.